Hi guys, and welcome on Cheaters and Jerks. This channel is about real-life cheating stories and consequences.
Please, Samantha. Jason's voice was a shattered whisper now. Stop this. David. He didn't need to see that. I glanced over my shoulder, letting my gaze flit dismissively over Jason. David is fine, I said, a cold edge creeping into my tone. He'll forget. Kids are resilient. But let's start from the beginning, right after your subscription to this channel. Packing had always been both a mundane and cathartic process for me. Every neatly folded piece of clothing held a secret, a promise of what was to come. I glanced over my shoulder, catching Jason's tired eyes watching me. He probably thought this would be a typical family vacation, a chance to patch up the cracks in our marriage. David, don't forget to bring your charger, Jason called out, his voice tinged with that weary tone he always wore these days. Poor guy. Got it, Dad, David chirped from the other room, his excitement palpable. He sounded like such a typical 8-year-old, innocent, playful, utterly unsuspecting. I zipped up my bag, savoring the sense of finality. This trip marked the end of one chapter and the delicious beginning of another. With one last glance in the mirror to ensure every strand of my auburn hair was in place, I turned back to my family. Ready? I asked, plastering on my best smile. Jason nodded, looking relieved. Yeah, let's go. The drive to the secluded lodge offered the perfect blend of nostalgia and anticipation. David chattered nonstop about the video games he'd brought along, his freckled face lit with excitement. Jason occasionally stole glances my way, his eyes softening as if this trip could somehow fix everything. As we pulled up to the lodge, the towering structure loomed ominously against the fading twilight. Just what I wanted. A haunting vibe to set the stage. David bolted out of the car, his sandy brown hair bouncing as he dashed inside. I'll check the place out, he yelled, already halfway through the door with his headphones clutched in one hand. Jason couldn't help but laugh. He's got more energy than both of us combined. I forced a chuckle, my mind already racing ahead to what lay in wait. Let's get settled then, I said, my tone cheerful. Jason busied himself with the bags, his obliviousness a subtle insult to my carefully laid plans. My phone buzzed, 10 unread messages lighting up the screen. Alex. Eagerness surged through me as I typed back, "We're ready." The interior of the lodge was spacious and rustic, the perfect blend of comfort and isolation. Visions of the upcoming spectacle flashed in my mind, each scenario more tantalizing than the last. Jason, still blissfully unaware, shuffled in with our bags, setting them down with a contented sigh. Feels nice, doesn't it? He remarked, stretching his arms. Mm-hmm, I muttered, already moving toward the door. I opened it to find Alex and 9 other men standing there, each exuding a different flavor of confidence. My heart raced as they strode in, their presence transforming the atmosphere instantly. Jason's face twisted with confusion. Who are these people? His eyes darted between me and the newcomers, anger quickly replacing confusion. What's going on? I couldn't help but smirk. Old friends, I lied smoothly, reveling in his discomfort. I poured drinks for the group, whiskey splashing into glasses, the amber liquid catching the dim light just right. The real show was about to begin, and every single detail had been curated to perfection. Jason's protests grew louder. Who the hell are you? His hands balled into fists as he stepped forward, trying to assert some semblance of control. Ignoring him, I took a sip of my drink. Relax, Jason. We're just here to have a good time. 2 men moved quicker than I could blink, grabbing him and forcing him into a chair and bound him to it. His struggles were futile against their strength. Anger and disbelief filled his eyes as they tied him down. What the hell are you doing? His voice broke as he wrestled against the restraints. I stood in front of him, unhurriedly scrolling through my phone. You always said you wanted honesty in this relationship, Jason. He glared at me, sweat forming on his forehead. Tears welled up in his hazel eyes. What are you talking about? Let me show you what that looks like. I pressed play. and held the screen in front of his face. As the videos played, Jason's expression shifted from confusion to pure horror. Explicit scenes of me with strangers filled the screen, raw, unfiltered, staged in places he thought was ours alone. His face contorted, disbelief mingling with the tears streaming down his cheeks. "You're surprised, really?" I mocked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe if you'd been more of a man, I wouldn't have needed this." He couldn't take his eyes off the screen, each scene a fresh dagger to his soul. It was beautiful watching him crumble, his spirit breaking as he finally saw me for what I was. David's laughter echoed from upstairs, blissfully unaware, adding a cruel contrast to the unfolding drama. "Why, Samantha?" Jason choked out, still struggling against the ropes. "Why would you do this?" I leaned down, my face close to his. "Because I could," I whispered, savoring each word. "Because you're weak." His sobs filled the room, blending with the laughter and clinking glasses. This was what honesty looked like: raw, brutal, and utterly satisfying. The room buzzed with anticipation, the low murmur of conversation humming before it burst into punctuated laughter. I adjusted the strap of my dress, a sleek black number that clung to my curves in all the right places. The fabric whispered against my skin as I moved, the soft rustling punctuated by the crackling fire in the lodge's hearth. Jason sat in an armchair, his wrists bound to the arms, his face ashen. His eyes, usually kind and weary, were wild tonight, filled with a mix of disbelief and desperation. His glasses had slipped to the tip of his nose, and his knuckles turned white as he gripped the wooden arms of the chair. "Oh, sweetheart," I drawled, letting my fingers trail down his cheek. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Please, Samantha," Jason's voice cracked, a raw edge to his words. "Stop this. I'm begging you." He squirmed, but the tight leather straps held firm. I laughed, letting the sound roll out across the room. The first man, a broad-shouldered, dark-haired guy named Leo, stepped up beside me, his hands finding the zipper at the back of my dress. I felt the cool air hit my skin as the fabric fell away, revealing the red lace underneath. "Stop?" "Oh, Jason," I purred, leaning in close so my breath tickled his ear. "You're going to sit there and watch what real men can do." Leo's hands roamed my body with practiced ease, and I made sure my eyes never left Jason's face. I wanted him to see every inch of what he'd never been able to satisfy. Leo started doing it with me. I exaggerated every movement, arching my back and moaning loudly, making a performance out of every moment. Jason's screams filled the room, a high-pitched wail of pure agony. His whole body trembled, and I relished the sight. The more he pleaded, the louder I performed, my cries of pleasure bouncing off the wooden walls of the lodge. Door hinges creaked, and the sound sliced through the scene like a knife. I stiffened, not immediately understanding. Then that small, tremulous voice cut through everything. "Mom!" I turned to see David standing in the doorway, his freckled face crumpling in confusion and fear. His big brown eyes, so much like Jason's, darted between the bound man and the strangers surrounding me. Jason's voice broke the stunned silence. "David, get out of here! Run!" Damn it. This wasn't part of the plan. I glared at my son, seeing a disruption to my carefully curated night. "David, go to your room," I snapped, waving him off like the nuisance he was in that moment. David hesitated, his eyes wide and glistening with tears. He seemed frozen, unable to process what was happening around him. "Go!" I shouted, my voice rising in impatience. Finally, the boy turned and bolted, the sound of his sobs filling the hallway before the slam of his door echoed back to us. I rolled my eyes and let out a frustrated sigh, turning my attention back to the men gathered around and the pitiful figure of Jason in the chair. "Where were we?" I asked, letting a small smile curve my lips again. "Ah, yes." A second man, taller and leaner than Leo, stepped forward. His fingers tangled in my hair as he pulled me into another searing kiss. I leaned into him, every movement deliberate, every sound I made crafted to cut Jason deeper. "Please, Samantha." Jason's voice was a shattered whisper now. "Stop this. David, he didn't need to see that." I glanced over my shoulder, letting my gaze flit dismissively over Jason. "David is fine," I said, a cold edge creeping into my tone. "He'll forget. Kids are resilient." At some point, I couldn't tell how long it had been, I noticed Jason had stopped screaming. His head hung low, his chest heaving with silent sobs. The room felt stifling, the air thick with sweat and desperation. It was intoxicating. I approached him, the echo of my heels on the wooden floor piercing through the murmur of the room. I knelt beside the chair, lifting his chin with a finger to meet his gaze. His eyes were bloodshot and swollen, his face streaked with tears. "Had enough, Jason?" I whispered, my voice dripping with mock sympathy. A weak nod, a barely there movement. "Good," I said, standing up and adjusting my dress, "because I think you finally learned your place." The sound of sirens broke through the chaos, a sharp contrast to the heated moans and Jason's sobs. I felt my stomach drop. "No," I whispered, my voice unsteady. The men scrambled, pulling on their clothes, as the blue and red lights illuminated the lodge windows. One of the guys, Kevin, nearly tripped over his own pants. "Shit, man, what do we do?" "Just shut up and get dressed," I hissed, my heart pounding. I turned to Jason, who sat bound and broken in the chair. His eyes had a gleam of something. Hope? Maybe? It enraged me. The front door burst open and the police flooded into the room, their flashlights blinding. "Everybody down on the ground," one of them barked. The room turned into a frenzy, everyone moving at once, but I tried to keep my composure. I wouldn't let them see me break. "This isn't what it looks like," I screamed at the officers, my voice cutting through the panic. I pointed wildly towards Jason. He set this up. It's a prank. A sick joke." Jason's broken laughter filled the space, echoing off the walls. "David called them," he choked out, his voice raspy from crying. I whipped my head back towards him, all my fury bubbling over. "You little coward!" I screamed, feeling the heat rise to my cheeks. "This is your fault." Strong hands grabbed my arms, forcing them behind my back, cold steel clamping around my wrists. "Ma'am, you're under arrest," one of the officers said, his tone flat, professional. "No, you don't understand." I struggled against the cuffs, desperation clawing its way up my throat. "You can't do this to me. I'm not the bad one here." The officers paid no mind to my pleas. The others, Kevin and Mark, were already on the ground, faces down, hands behind their heads. David stood in the hallway, small and fragile, just staring at everything unfolding. His wide eyes were like mirrors, reflecting all the chaos. "Mom?" His little voice trembled, breaking through my rage. I turned to him, forced to drop my act. "David, baby, it's okay. Just go back to your room. Don't look at this." My voice softened, a stark contrast to the venom I spewed at Jason. An officer gently ushered David away as another led me towards the door. Jason's laughter turned into sobs again, the weight of it all seeming to crash down on him. As they dragged me out, my mind raced, trying to piece together what went wrong. How did it all spiral out of control so quickly? I had manipulated so many situations before, always coming out on top. But here I was, in cuffs, my son calling the police on me. The unfairness of it all gnawed at me. The cold night air hit me as we stepped outside, the flashing lights of the patrol cars painting the scene in vivid colors. Reporters and onlookers probably wouldn't be far behind. This mess was going to be everywhere. But all I could think about was David. Somehow, he had found the courage to put an end to my carefully constructed chaos. A few weeks later, I sat in the courtroom, my jaw clenched so tight I could feel a headache forming. The prosecutor, a balding man with beady eyes, droned on and on about my crimes. as if living my life the way I wanted was some kind of offense. "Your Honor, members of the jury," he said, his voice grating on my last nerve, "the evidence before you paints a clear picture of Mrs. Miller's callous disregard for her family." I rolled my eyes. What a load of bullshit. They didn't understand. Nobody did. My lawyer, a mousy woman named Karen, kept patting my arm like I was some kind of frightened child. "It'll be okay," she whispered. "We'll present your side." I jerked my arm away. My side? As if she had any clue what my side really was. The prosecutor clicked a button, and suddenly the courtroom was filled with sounds I knew all too well. My own voice, breathy and excited, filled the air. I couldn't help but smirk as I watched the faces of the jury. Some looked disgusted, others fascinated. Good. Let them see what real passion looks like. "As you can see," the prosecutor said, his face a mask of faux outrage, "Mrs. Miller not only engaged in multiple affairs but took great pleasure in humiliating her husband." I glanced over at Jason, sitting there looking all sad and pathetic. Serves him right, the spineless bastard. Then it was time for the testimonies. Jason took the stand first, his voice annoyingly steady as he recounted our marriage. "Samantha was different when we first met," he said, not meeting my eyes. "She was vibrant, full of life, but over time it was like living with a stranger. She became cruel, manipulative." I wanted to laugh. Cruel? He didn't know the meaning of the word. But then came David. My stomach twisted as I watched my little boy climb into the witness stand. He looked so small, so scared. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of something. Regret? No, that wasn't it. "I don't understand why my mom did this," David said, his voice barely above a whisper. Tears were streaming down his face. "I just wanted her to love us." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Love them? Of course I loved them. In my own way. They just didn't appreciate it. The verdict came faster than I expected. Guilty on all counts. The words echoed in my head as the judge sentenced me to 10 years. 10 ducking years. "Your selfish actions have destroyed your family," the judge said, looking down at me with disgust. "You will spend the next decade reflecting on the pain you've caused." I barely heard the rest. My lovers got 5 to 8 years each. Serves them right for being so weak. As the bailiff led me out, I caught Jason's eye. He was hugging David, both of them looking at me like I was some kind of monster. "This isn't over," I hissed, making sure they heard me. "This isn't ducking over." I stared at the gray concrete walls of my cell. My once manicured nails now chipped and broken. The harsh, fluorescent lights flickered, casting an unflattering glow on my faded skin. I'd lost count of how many days I'd been in this hellhole. Prison. Me. Samantha Miller. The thought still made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. "Miller, you've got mail!" A guard's gruff voice echoed through the corridor. I perked up, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, it was from Jason or David. As the guard slid the envelope through the bars, my heart sank. It was just another letter from my court-appointed therapist, reminding me of our upcoming session. "Duck," I muttered, tossing the letter aside. The other inmates whispered as I passed by on my way to the common area. I could feel their eyes on me, hear the malicious glee in their voices. "There goes the lodge woman," one of them sneered. "Bet she ain't feeling so high and mighty now." I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to lash out. It wouldn't do me any good here. I'd learned that lesson the hard way during my first month. As I sat down for another mind-numbing therapy session, Dr. Evelyn Harper peered at me over her glasses. "How are you feeling today, Samantha?" I rolled my eyes. Just peachy, living the dream. "Sarcasm isn't going to help you process your actions, Samantha," she said, her voice annoyingly calm. "What do you want me to say?" I snapped. "That I'm sorry? That I regret everything?" "Do you?" I laughed bitterly. "The only thing I regret is getting caught." Dr. Harper scribbled something in her notebook. Let's talk about the events at the lodge. Can you walk me through what happened? My mind flashed back to that day. The thrill of power, the look of devastation on Jason's face, the shock in David's eyes. For a moment, I felt a twinge of something. Guilt? Remorse? I shoved it away. Jason drove me to it, I said, the words tumbling out automatically. If he had been a real man, if he had given me what I needed. Samantha, Dr. Harper interrupted gently. We've discussed this before. Your actions were your own choice. No one drove you to do anything. I glared at her. You don't understand. You weren't there. You don't know what it was like being married to him. Then help me understand, she prodded. What was it about Jason that made you feel justified in your actions? I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. What could I say? That he was kind? That he loved me unconditionally? That he was a good father to David? None of those things justified what I'd done. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Harper nodded, jotting down more notes. That's a start, Samantha. Acknowledging that you don't have all the answers is an important step. As I walked back to my cell, her words echoed in my head. I didn't have the answers. I didn't know why I'd done what I'd done. And that terrified me more than anything else in this godforsaken place. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. I found myself sitting at a rickety table in the prison library, pen poised over a blank sheet of paper. I'd been trying to write to Jason and David for weeks, but the words never came out right. Dear Jason, I began, then immediately crossed it out. Too formal. Jason, I tried again. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I crumpled up the paper, tossing it aside. What could I possibly say to make things right? A shadow fell over me, and I looked up to see Maria, one of the few inmates who didn't treat me like complete garbage. Still trying to write that letter? She asked, sliding into the seat across from me. I nodded, running a hand through my limp hair. I don't know why I bother. They probably won't even read it. Maria shrugged. Maybe not, but you gotta try, right? For your own sake, if nothing else. I stared at the blank paper, feeling the weight of everything I'd lost pressing down on me. I don't even know who I am anymore, I whispered. That's the thing about hitting rock bottom, Maria said, her voice surprisingly gentle. You get to decide who you want to be when you climb back up. As she walked away, I picked up the pen again. This time, the words came a little easier. David, I wrote, I know I've hurt you in ways that might never heal. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I think about you every day. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I sealed the letter before I could change my mind, along with a similar one to Jason. Whether they read them or not, at least I'd tried. The days continued to pass, each one chipping away at the person I used to be. I caught a glimpse of myself in the scratched mirror of the communal bathroom and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. My once vibrant hair hung limp and graying around my face. The spark that used to light up my eyes had long since faded. You look like shit, Miller, a voice called out behind me. I turned to see Tanya, one of the tougher inmates, leaning against the doorframe. Thanks for the update, I muttered, splashing water on my face. Tanya chuckled. You know, I used to hate your guts when you first got here. All high and mighty, acting like you were better than the rest of us. I met her gaze in the mirror. And now? She shrugged. Now, you're just another duck up like the rest of us. Welcome to the club. As she sauntered away, I realized she was right. I wasn't special anymore. I wasn't the beautiful, charismatic Samantha who could bend men to my will with a smile. I was just another inmate, serving time for the choices I'd made. That night, as I lay on my hard bunk staring at the ceiling, I allowed myself to really think about Jason and David for the first time in years. Not as pawns in my game, not as people I could manipulate, but as the family I'd destroyed. I remembered David's laugh, the way his eyes lit up when he saw me. I thought about Jason's unwavering love, his patience, his kindness. And for the first time since I'd been locked up, I cried. Not for myself, but for them, for what I'd taken from them. As the tears flowed, I realized that this was the person I'd become. A broken woman, alone in a cell, finally facing the consequences of her actions. And as much as it hurt, as much as I wanted to blame someone else, I knew that this was all on me. The next morning, I approached Dr. Harper's office with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. "I'm ready," I said as I sat down across from her. She raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what, Samantha?" I took a deep breath. "Ready to take responsibility. Ready to face what I've done. I want to change." Dr. Harper smiled, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "That's a big step, Samantha. Are you sure you're prepared for how difficult this journey might be?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of fear and determination. I have to be. For David, for Jason, and for myself. As we began to delve into the depths of my actions and motivations, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long and painful, but for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not hope that I could undo what I'd done, but hope that maybe, just maybe, I could become someone worthy of forgiveness someday. Hey everyone, if you found this story gripping and want more jaw-dropping tales, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you're always in the loop. Always in the loop. Always in the loop. Always in